Both the philosophy of Nietzsche and Stoicism have seen a gigantic surge in popularity lately, and justifiably so. In an era of chaos and uncertainty, people are searching for answers, whether it's the Nietzschean call for self-overcoming or the calm resilience of Stoicism. But what happens when two of the most influential thinkers in history go head to head? One, a former slave-turned-philosopher who preaches inner peace through acceptance. The other, a rebel with an epic mustache who calls for a radical affirmation of life, even in the face of chaos. In today's video, we're throwing Epictetus and Nietzsche into the ring to see who comes out on top. Metaphorically speaking, of course. At first glance, you might think these two legends of philosophy would see eye to eye. After all, both Nietzsche and Epictetus preach the importance of accepting one's fate. They both reflect about the nature of suffering and how it can shape us. To the untrained eye, you could imagine them shaking hands. But when we take a closer look, it becomes apparent that these two wouldn't exactly be best friends. In fact, Nietzsche's relationship with Stoicism is way more complicated than it first seems. You could say it's a bit rocky. Before we continue, if you're not too familiar with Stoicism or Nietzsche's work, make sure to check out our video on Epictetus and our breakdowns of Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil. We'll be referencing a lot of Nietzschean concepts in this video, so it might help to get up to speed. With that out of the way, let's get into it. Round 1. Nietzsche's beef with Stoicism. So where do we start? There is this one specific passage in Beyond Good and Evil in which Nietzsche lays the absolute smackdown with Stoicism. And let's be clear, Nietzsche doesn't hold back in this book. He goes after a lot of things, brutally. The passage I'm talking about is from aphorism number 9. This section is pretty long, so I won't read the entire thing here, but I want to highlight this key part. And I quote, "You desire to live according to nature. O you noble Stoics, what fraud of words! Imagine to yourselves a being like nature, boundlessly extravagant, boundlessly indifferent, without purpose or consideration, without pity or justice, at once fruitful and barren and uncertain. Imagine to yourselves indifference as a power. How could you live in accordance with such indifference? To live, is not that just endeavoring to be otherwise than this nature? Is not living estimating, preferring, being unjust, being limited, endeavoring to be different?" Let's give a bit more context to this passage and break it down. First of all, Nietzsche begins his critique with a scathing accusation that the Stoics are guilty of self-deception. He calls their desire to live according to nature a fraud of words, suggesting that the Stoics have misunderstood or misrepresented the nature they claim to emulate. For Nietzsche, nature is not this harmonious, ordered and rational force that the Stoics portray. It is chaotic, indifferent, and often even brutal. Nietzsche suggests that the Stoics are not really conforming to nature, but are rather imposing their own moral ideals upon it. By claiming to live according to nature, the Stoics are essentially dressing up their own values as if they were universal, objective truths. Nietzsche argues that this is a form of intellectual dishonesty, a failure to confront the true chaotic nature of existence. Stoicism, as Nietzsche puts it quite clearly, is a form of self-imposed tyranny. To live according to nature in the Nietzschean sense would mean embracing all of its aspects, including chaos, unpredictability, and passion, not just the rational and controlled parts. The Stoic, therefore, seeks to dominate nature within themselves by denying these vital instinctual forces. Nietzsche sees this as fundamentally anti-life. Instead of embracing the full spectrum of human experience, Stoicism attempts to subdue it, to fit it into a rigid mold of what is considered rational or virtuous. For Nietzsche, this represents a deep discomfort with life as it truly is, wild, creative, destructive, and most of all, indifferent. And the point in this round goes to Nietzsche. Why? Because I find Nietzsche's critique of Stoicism a pretty compelling argument. Plus, his brutal takedown in Beyond Good and Evil is like watching a philosophical mic drop. Now, to be fair, Nietzsche had about 1,800 years of philosophical history to look back on since Epictetus wrote his ideas. So it might not be totally fair. But hey, that's the nature of philosophical evolution, and Nietzsche lands the point in this round. Round 2. Amor Fati. Let's look at a specific idea of Nietzsche that we also find in the philosophy of Epictetus, which is the idea of Amor Fati. When we look at Nietzsche's philosophy, Amor Fati is one of the most important ideas he presents. We need to accept and even celebrate life in its entirety, both the ups and downs, the joys and the sorrows. Nietzsche borrows this idea from the Latin term, which quite literally translates to love of fate. Nietzsche invites us to embrace life as it is, without turning away or hoping for something better beyond it. He directly challenges Christian beliefs, which often place emphasis on a afterlife as the true destination. Instead, Nietzsche tells us this life, right here, right now, is what matters most. In similar fashion, his philosophy is a reaction to that of the philosopher Schopenhauer, who believed that the world is fundamentally flawed and that the best response is to retreat into a life of denial and asceticism. For Nietzsche, this rejection of the world misses the point. To live fully, we must affirm life, not shy away from it. Epictetus, on the other hand, advocates for indifference toward life's events, something that in his view diminishes the vibrancy and fullness of living, which, in a sense, makes Epictetus just as guilty as Christianity and Schopenhauer, because from a Nietzschean point of view, he denies the fullness of life. Modern interpretations of Stoicism often soften this perspective. And yes, we are looking at you, Ryan Holiday. But if we go back to the original texts, it's clear Epictetus was promoting something quite stark. Take, for example, these passages from his Enchiridion. With regard to whatever objects give you delight, are useful, or are deeply loved, remember to tell yourself of what nature they are, beginning with the most insignificant things. If you have a favorite cup, remember that it is only a cup that you love. Then, if it breaks, you will not be disturbed. If you kiss your child or your wife, say that you only kiss things which are human, and thus you will not be disturbed if either of them dies. Epictetus suggests that when you find joy in something, like a cherished object, you should remind yourself it's just an ordinary item. For instance, if you enjoy a particular cup, remind yourself that it's just that, a cup. So if it breaks, you won't be upset. His example regarding the child or wife is a tad more extreme. However, the point remains the same. If you attach yourself to something external, you will always feel at loss when you lose this particular thing. As we can see, both Nietzsche and Epictetus grapple with the idea of accepting life, but they take it in strikingly different directions. Nietzsche's Amor Fati is a fierce embrace of life in its totality, a passionate, almost rebellious celebration of all its ups and downs. He demands that we not just accept our fate, but love it, affirming every joy and every sorrow as an essential part of our existence. Epictetus, by contrast, advises a calm detachment, urging us to view the world with a cool indifference that protects us from the pain of loss. But to Nietzsche, as we discussed earlier, this approach risks losing the vibrant pulse of life, the raw, unfiltered experience that makes us truly alive. So who wins this round? It's a very close call, because both approaches offer valuable insights into how we can navigate in the chaos of existence, but ultimately the point goes to Nietzsche. His call to not just endure, but to celebrate every aspect of life pushes us to engage more fully with the world around us. Epictetus might help us stay calm in the storm, but Nietzsche inspires us to dance in the rain. Things aren't looking good for our friendly neighborhood Epictetus, but don't count out the Stoic just yet. So let's get straight into it and go to round 3. Round 3. The ideal human, Übermensch versus sage. In Nietzsche's philosophy, the Übermensch, often translated as overman or superman, represents the pinnacle of human potential. This figure is not bound by conventional morality, social norms, or any predefined code of ethics. The Übermensch doesn't follow rules, he creates them. Nietzsche's Übermensch embodies radical self-overcoming, constantly evolving beyond their own limitations. They are life-affirming, embracing all of existence, including its darkest moments, as opportunities for growth. The Übermensch is the ultimate creator, a true life artist who turns suffering into strength, chaos into order, and personal struggle into a masterpiece of individuality. Think of the Übermensch as someone who doesn't just accept life on its terms, but who elevates it to an entirely new level, guided by their own will and creativity. In a certain sense, Nietzsche's Übermensch is the antidote to the nihilism he saw creeping into modern life, the loss of meaning and purpose that comes from clinging to outdated values. Instead of despairing in the face of a chaotic, indifferent universe, the Übermensch confronts them by creating new values to give their life meaning. Epictetus, on the other hand, presents a very different vision of the ideal human, the Stoic sage. This figure embodies perfect reason, self-mastery, and harmony with nature. For the Stoic sage, the goal is not to rebel against the world, but to align oneself with its natural order. The sage understands that while we can't control external events, we can control our responses to them. They are unshakable, undisturbed by fortune's highs and lows, living with a calm detachment that allows them to maintain inner peace no matter what happens around them. The sage is the epitome of resilience. They are not seeking to change the world or impose their will upon it. Instead, they focus on mastering themselves. This mastery isn't about grand acts of creation or defiance, but about an unyielding commitment to living in accordance with nature's rational order. The sage accepts everything that happens as necessary, even the painful moments, finding contentment in their own virtue and inner tranquility. The Stoic sage's strength lies in their consistency and discipline, a kind of quiet heroism that may not capture the imagination like Nietzsche's Übermensch, but offers a practical path to enduring life's hardships with dignity and grace. So what we have here are two incredibly different ideals. Nietzsche's Übermensch, who pushes boundaries, rejects societal norms and forges new paths, and Epictetus' Stoic sage, who seeks harmony within and calmly navigates life's turbulence. The Übermensch is all about breaking free, about liberation from all that confines the human spirit. There's an undeniable power in this vision, a call to live fiercely, unapologetically, and creatively. It's intoxicating, but also intimidating. Nietzsche asks us to aim high, to confront the abyss and say yes. It's a thrilling but difficult path, demanding nothing less than a complete reimagining of who we are. On the flip side, the Stoic sage offers a more grounded and accessible way of being. While the Übermensch seems almost literally superhuman, the sage feels like an ideal we could realistically strive towards, someone who isn't trying to change the world, but instead changing themselves in relation to it. Epictetus' sage teaches us that we can find peace not by altering the chaos around us, but by mastering our inner response to it. While Nietzsche's Übermensch is a bold, exhilarating vision that dares us to reinvent life, it can almost feel unattainable for the average person. It's a figure that seems to exist on the edge of humanity, more mythological than real. Meanwhile, Epictetus' Stoic sage provides a clear, practical blueprint for achieving inner peace and resilience. The sage's approach doesn't demand us to become superhuman. It simply asks us to master ourselves. So while Nietzsche's ideal dazzles with its promise of self-overcoming and radical creativity, Epictetus wins this round by offering a philosophy that feels both reachable and deeply empowering. The Stoic sage may not climb the highest peaks, but they teach us how to stand firm in any storm, which, let's face it, is a pretty incredible skill in today's world. So there we have it. After 3 rounds, Nietzsche takes the edge with 2 points to Epictetus 1. But before we close the book on this showdown, let's not forget this video wasn't about declaring one philosopher better than the other. Ultimately, both thinkers offer us different tools for different situations. So whether you're a die-hard Nietzschean or a Stoic, there's something valuable to be found in both approaches. The real challenge, and the real reward, is figuring out how to apply these insights to your own life. Something that, in my opinion, is missed in a lot of contemporary philosophy. Remember, philosophy isn't a zero-sum game. We can draw wisdom from different camps, depending on what life throws our way. This video wasn't meant as our most serious one, but don't worry. We'll dive deeper into other philosophers in future videos where we can really impact them in a more serious light. As a matter of fact, we're working on lots of exciting projects right now, covering everything from Foucault to Japanese philosophy to more Kierkegaard and much, much more. Thanks for sticking with us through this philosophical battle royale. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more philosophy. Let us know in the comments whose side you're on, Epictetus or Nietzsche, and what topic you want us to tackle next. Catch you in the next one. Take care.